Welcome. My name is Tom, and I am a Senior Assistant Director here at Clark University. I want to welcome you all today to this webinar. We're talking about the transfer student experience here at Clark. And so before we get started with our panelists today, I just want to outline how asking questions work. So if you have a question, we want you to ask the question, and that's what we're here for. So just use the Q&A section in Zoom if you have a question for our panel. If you want to report a technical issue, go ahead and use the chat function. So we really want to keep that chat function open separately, only if you're experiencing a technical issue. Otherwise, go ahead and put the questions into the Q&A function, and we'll go ahead and get those questions out to our panelists. And I do see another couple people joining here. So if you're just joining us, welcome. My name is Tom, and I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Transfer Admissions. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in the Q&A section for our panelists. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and introduce our panelists here today. So we're joined by a few folks here, and I'm really happy that they've given their time here to help us out. So we'll go ahead and meet our panelists. And if each of you can just briefly introduce what it is you do here at Clark, that would be fantastic. So we'll go ahead and start with my colleague, Emily Dean. Emily.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I am an admissions counselor here at Clark. I recently started as an admissions counselor, but before that, I was a student. I finished my undergrad in December, and I was a transfer student at Clark. So I did my first 2 years at Greenfield Community College, and then I transferred to Clark in 2019, and then I just completed my undergrad. And now, like I said, I work in the admissions office as an admissions counselor.
I assume I go next. My name is Brandon Frenzik. I am Assistant Director of the Academic Advising Center, and it's very nice to see you all today.
You beat me to the introduction, but yeah, okay. Thank you, Brandon. Then next we'll go to Jess.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Montecalvo. I'm the Director of Residential Life and Housing. Within my role, I oversee everything from the operational side of house. So when you're selecting your housing on campus, to maintaining those spaces, to the programming that's happening in the halls, our student leaders who are working and supporting students in the hall. So can really answer anything that has to do with housing on campus.
All right, fantastic. We'll go to Danielle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Morgan Acosta, she, her pronouns. I serve as the Associate Dean of Students for Student Engagement and Belonging. So I like to say that means that if you become a Clarkie, it is my job to make sure that you make meaning of the experience that you have outside of the classroom and love your time at Clark. You can ask me questions about orientation, about our identity-based pre-orientation programs, about wellness activities that we have on campus, as well as campus traditions and all of the programming and clubs and activities that are taking place here. Nice to see you.
All right, thank you, Danielle. We'll go to Jen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Plan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Dean of Academic Services, and in my role, I oversee the offices of academic support, which houses the tutoring center and the writing center. I also oversee student accessibility services, which provides students with housing and academic accommodations for those students who have documentation. And I also oversee the Office of Academic Advising. It's nice to be here.
All right, thank you, Jen. And we have Yvette.
Hi, thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Eva Walters. I'm the Director of Academic Advising Center. And one of the things I do is to evaluate your courses from your previous institution. So if you have questions about the evaluation, or you have questions about whether or not a course would be accepted or meet one of Clark Program Liberal Studies requirement, I can help you with that. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. So we do have a couple questions coming through in the chat, and so I think we can start with some of those. So one of the questions is a question about housing, and so the question is how are transfer students housed? Are they housed with other transfer students?
Yeah, that's a great question. So transfer students, like any incoming students, will have the opportunity to fill out the housing application form. So we have a 4-semester residency requirement here at Clark. So incoming transfer students who don't meet that requirement quite yet will apply for housing on campus. Really, we have a bunch of different options at Clark. We have fully mixed year halls. We have dedicated upper class suite and apartment style halls. So I say that there's options for everyone. In general, transfers will live amongst other students of their similar class year. In some situations, we do end up with a handful of transfer students on a floor together or in a house or a suite together. But in general, incoming students, transfers or first years have a lot of sort of autonomy to share with us what type of housing you're interested in, what types of suite versus a traditional single or a double, so the type of room type you're interested in, and even your ability to rank and articulate for us what some of your preferences in housing are.
Awesome. I've got another question here that came in, and I can answer this question. This is a kind of a logistical question. The student asked, when is the last date to be able to submit the enrollment reply form? So for our fall admits, the deposit deadline is May 15th. If there is a concern about that, enrollment reply form and that date, you can definitely reach out to us as well at transferadmissions@clarku.edu. Or you can shoot me an email, thmorgan@clarku.edu. Yeah. Alrighty. Another question is coming up about where the housing form is located, and we can follow up with you separately on that. Another question that come up is about orientation. So I got a question about saying, is a pre-orientation available for transfer students? So let's kind of just talk about generally, what does orientation look like for transfer students here at Clark?
I think that will also help with the where to find the housing form, because if you go to clarku.edu/orientation and undergrad orientation, you'll want to find that to-do list. And that is the magical space of all of the things you need to accomplish. And in there, you'll be able to get the information about the housing form, as well as registering for orientation. Our transfer student orientation, well, let me say there's two different types of orientations. And so at Clark, what we really want to know is how many credits or units you are coming into Clark with. And really that will help us distinguish if you will participate in first year orientation, because you don't have a full full academic term on your credentials. And we want you to participate in our Navigator program and our first year intensive. And I know my academic colleagues will share more about why we know those are so important and really help you kind of embrace the Clark experience. And so folks with less than 8 units transferring in will participate in new student and first year orientation, which is on Thursday, I want to say August 25th, but let me double check my calendar because that's in a long time from now. August 25th. Transfer orientation. So for our students who probably have finished their associates or have multiple years of college credit coming into Clark, they will participate in transfer student orientation, which will begin Friday, August 26th. You'll go through many of the same things, but we know that kind of depending on where you are in your undergraduate journey, you need kind of different experiences. And so the transfer orientation is really geared towards helping students acclimate to Clark. Where our first year orientation is about that first year experience, about that transition through the Navigator program and acclimating not only to Clark, but really to the transition of living on campus and doing some of those other things. I think there was a question about pre-orientation. So we have many pre-orientation programs. If you are a student that needs accommodations from student accessibility services, regardless of if you're a first year or transfer, you can participate in early SAS orientation. And that will mean you will move in on Wednesday, April 24th, and go through just a series of programs, understanding more about what the university will provide for you, spending a bit more time kind of getting situated and moving into your residence hall, and kind of easing in and spending some additional time with your peer mentors, which are the best part probably of orientation, our student leaders. We also do have, for if there's any international students, there's an international program that begins on the Monday of that week. And our students of color who are transfer students are able to participate in our Connections program. That application is coming up due a priority deadline of May 26th. That is for students of color. And that program begins the weekend before orientation, so almost a full week before. And there's a series of programs and activities and kind of fun things to get acclimated to our office, to students. It's a great opportunity. If you have first year status, so again, under those 8 credits, you could also register for the ACE program. We tend to see less transfer students participate in ACE. It's a 3-week academic intensive that also does some of the community building and leadership building for our first generation students. So students who are the first person in their family to go to college, like if your parents or your guardians didn't go to college and obtain their degree, or our students of color. And so I just mentioned many things. I will say, if you go to that orientation page, you can see and kind of click through the different experiences. And I'd love to talk about the ones that might make sense for you. There is an application, as I stated, for ACE and Connections that is due by May 26th, because there is a living learning component to it. For the other pre-orientation programs, you'll just register for orientation and tell us which offices you are connected with, and we will kind of help you understand and navigate when you are supposed to come to campus. And so that form is due June 26th, so that we'll know how many credits you have and which offices you're registered with, and be able to make sure that we have an experience that is tailored to your unique kind of how you are entering Clark.
So I have kind of two pieces here, 2 follow-ups here. Could you just talk a little bit more about what is the first year intensive class, and then what is the Navigator program? And this is for anyone. So, you know, Jen, would you be able to field that question?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that. So what is the Navigator and what is the first year intensive cluster of courses? So every student who comes into Clark, who matriculates into Clark with fewer than 8 units of credit, will need to take something called a first year intensive course. These are courses offered within the disciplines across Clark. So, you know, there are first year intensives offered in the history department, economics, you know, every department is represented. And these courses are smaller courses. They're usually capped at 16 or 18 students. And that course's faculty member will become the student's academic advisor until the time where the student declares their major. These are intentionally small courses so that students can really form a community of learners, get to know other students, get to know the faculty person really well. And along with things like the course content, the faculty members will, sorry, my cat is insistent on showing his face. The faculty member will work with students on some other things like transitional issues. You know, what does it mean? What does it mean to write a college level paper? What are the resources on Clark's campus? The Navigator is a sort of like a section attached to the first year intensive, and students will meet with the students within their first year intensive, as well as a peer mentor who will guide the session, facilitate the session. And in that Navigator section, the peer mentor will talk with students about additional transitional issues. So, you know, what is the Career Connection Center and why should students go? What can students expect? how early should students start thinking about, getting their resume in order and maybe doing an internship or job shadowing, all kinds of other issues. What to do if you're having an issue with your roommate. Here are some things that, the peer mentors have been there and done that. So they will help guide students through typical first semester in particular, topics that can come up. So that's the Navigator, and that is the cluster of first year intensive courses. Again, every student who comes into Clark with fewer than 8 units of credit will be required to take a first year intensive, but can take only one. So I hope that answers your question.
No, that's awesome. And just to follow up for everyone here. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Yvette.
No, I just wanted to piggyback on what Jen said real quickly. Some of you may have had the experience of taking something very similar at your previous institution, and we recognize that you've gotten, the ins and outs of that institution, but we want you to be at Clark and want you to be able to transition and get to know Clark, because Clark is most certainly different from your previous institution. We know that you're not going to be new to college, but you're going to be new to Clark, and we want to provide that foundation and the support to give you so you can learn and grow as you're in Clark. And we're doing that starting with the Navigator program and with the first year intensive. And not everybody's going to have to take required to take that, but most likely we encourage all students to be part of the navigation program.
Awesome. And this is kind of a good segue. So what does advising look like at Clark? So Yvette and Brandon, could you guys answer that one?
Advising at Clark comes in different forms. We at Academic Advising, we are generalists. We advise all and every student, undergraduate student, on things such as filling out forms, making some course selection suggestions, reaching out to maybe a faculty member for a student. I'm sorry about that. But each student is going to be assigned to an advisor. We have for the incoming transfer student who's coming in with more than 8 units, will be assigned to someone within their academic interest, the first academic interest, who's going to help guide them to the registration period. You should be receiving, once we get everything settled and we've chosen all of the advisors, you will be getting information on your faculty advisor. You're going to then reach out to that person to make an appointment, and the faculty advisor is going to help you with the course selection, suggest courses and maybe opportunities within the department that's going to help you for their first semester. For those who are coming in, and we said this before, if you're coming in with less than 8 units and you take a first year intensive, as you will be required, that instructor will then become your first year intensive faculty member, who's going to help guide you through the first 2 years until you declare a major. There are different kind of advising at Clark. There's advising for students with accessibility services. There's students who are probably pre-health, who's thinking about going into the sciences. There's a pre-law, that if you have questions about pre-law, the political science department will be able to help you. So there are different kind of advising. And once we meet and we get to talk to you, you can tell us more about you and hopefully your future goals, and we can help guide you towards the correct advisor that you'll be able to have those discussions with, who's going to help you with some external opportunities. There's also career services advising. So there's a whole lot of advising and support at Clark for students who are coming in. Once we connect and you get here on campus in August, we'll be able to help provide you with some of those pathways that you can go and be successful.
Awesome. And Brandon, I'm going to ask you this question: How does transfer credit work? Students joining us in this webinar, they should have a transfer credit evaluation form, but maybe they might have some difficulty kind of reading it or understanding it, or what to do with next steps. So could you kind of help us through that process a little bit?
I'm so sorry, Tom. I did not hear a lick of that. You're breaking up on my end. Yvette, did you hear that question? Because maybe you could just hop in.
Yes, I did hear that question. So transfer credit and the process, that we do, we look at the course that you've taken at your previous institution and we evaluate those courses. We will give you, so the transfer process and credit evaluation is a little bit different. At Clark, each full unit of Clark is worth technically 4 credits. So if you take a class at your previous institution and it's a 3-credit course, when you get your evaluation back, you're going to see 0.75. And that's the conversion that we use. And it's a universal conversion that we use to follow the conversion of units. So you're going to see 0.75. That course is going to come in as a full course. So you're not going to have to make that 0.25 up. It's going to be a full course. We also look for course equivalency. So we may have a course that perhaps fulfill one of Clark program of liberal studies. There may be a class that is the equivalent to a class at Clark, and we will note that on your evaluation. So when you get that back, you're going to see something that says CU IDND 18 or CU Psych 101 or something like that. That is a conversion of Clark course. Now, sometimes we have difficulty assessing a course. We may not know if the class fulfill a requirement. So what we will do, we put a code. You may see a B or something next to it. That means that we want you to provide perhaps a syllabus or a description so we can give you a better evaluation of that course. If you do come to Clark and you're already here and you're unable to get that before you do come, but when you do get to Clark, we can still evaluate it. So you're not going to lose that class. You can have that and you can bring that with you, or you can email it to us. We will then do a re-evaluation of transfer credit to make sure that you are given proper credit for that. There are some courses, like some of the psychology courses and perhaps some management courses, that we would tend not to give a Clark equivalency to, because the department themselves like to see those courses, like to see the description. So sometimes if you see a class is given credit, but we also ask you for a description, is because we want to send that to the department so they can give you that evaluation that equates to a major course. So that way you're not fulfilling, you're not retaking courses that you've taken before. So if you do get that evaluation and you see a B or you see a D, we recently started accepting unofficial transcript to the evaluation, but we cannot give you by law credit for those until we get the official transcript. So if you see something like a D, it means once we receive those transcripts, the unit will then become official. So I would strongly encourage any of you, if you do come into Clark, to get your final transcript in to us. That will help put those classes in the system. A lot of those classes can serve as prerequisites, and that way you'll be able to take the next level of the class that you want to take. So send those transcripts in, send the description in, look at the code. If something is pending and you have a question, feel free to send us an email, and it is advising@clarku.edu. Send us your questions. We are there, and there are 3 of us in the office. One of us will be able to respond to your question. So if you have a pen, it's advising@clarku.edu. Please send us your questions.
And thank you, Yvette, for 2 things there. One, clarifying the Clark unit in terms of it being, the equivalency and how it works out in terms of semester hour credits. And then also that reminder for the transcript, right? So the sooner the better. So we're going to transition a little bit. And so we're going to hear from Emily a little bit. And so the question we have here is, what was it like transferring to Clark? So Emily, you were a transfer student to Clark. So what was that transition like for you as a former transfer student?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay? Is it coming in? All right. Okay. So I came to Clark from a community college in Western Massachusetts. I did my first 2 years there. And then I really enjoyed being at community college, but of course, that's only a 2-year program. And I really wanted to continue on and go on and do something after that. My main thing that I was looking for in a school to transfer to was just a high level of community involvement, especially coming from a community college where it was a commuter school. So I would just kind of like go to class and then go home. I really wanted to be at a school that valued student involvement and just had a lot of opportunities for students to get involved both on and off campus. And so Clark was put on my radar when I was going through the transfer process. I visited campus and I immediately like fell in love. It became my top choice school. So I was really excited when I was accepted to Clark. I, especially after like visiting campus, I really got the sense that like this seems like the kind of place where students are really involved and want to actually make a difference. And so that really turned out to be true once I actually became a student. I was definitely not disappointed or like let down in any way in that sense, just because I think that it exceeded my expectations in terms of like being a campus where students are really involved and students who are willing to actually go and like take the extra step to get involved. So transferring into Clark, there's a lot that I could talk about, but I think just to kind of summarize it, I before coming to Clark, I joined like the Accepted Students Facebook group, just because I was hoping to like meet some people. And we did our little introductions where everybody would be like, oh, like this is my name, this is the kind of music I like, all this stuff to like find a roommate or just find friends. And I was actually able to connect with a few other transfer students that way. And even to this day, those people are some of my closest friends. So that definitely made the transition easier. I think especially coming in as a transfer student, it's like a very special, unique group where you've already like been through the whole college search process once before. You're leaving one community and then joining one in what seems like the middle of the whole college experience. So one piece of advice would just be to reach out. There's tons of ways that you can get connected with other committed or deposited students. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. Coming into Clark, it really helped to have that kind of support network, but it also didn't limit me in terms of like, even though I was a transfer student and I was friends with other transfer students, I was still able to make friends with people who weren't transfer students and make friends in classes and things like that. So when I had orientation, I was in a group with other transfer students, which I think was really helpful just because it allowed me to talk with people who were kind of going through a similar process. But what I also liked about that was I wasn't just in classes with other transfer students, or I wasn't like, my roommate wasn't even a transfer student. So it really allowed me to kind of diversify the people that I was interacting with. And I think that I was able to transition well because of that. I know I've been kind of rambling, but overall, I think it was like a really positive transfer experience. I'm definitely someone who really struggled with like putting myself out there. I have always wanted to become more involved, but it was something that I was just kind of nervous about coming into Clark. But I think that both like the faculty administration and the students at Clark make it a really easy thing to do, even if you are coming in and you're, nervous. Obviously, as a transfer student, you might not know anyone there. But I think that Clark's environment makes it really easy to kind of make that transition and become an actual part of, like, become a Clarkie. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your experience. Kind of a quick follow-up question to that is, what kinds of like clubs and activities did you kind of get involved in while you were at Clark?
Oh, sorry. It's cutting out a little bit. You asked about clubs.
Yeah, like what type of clubs and activities did you get involved in when you were at Clark?
So the first week of classes, they had the club fair, which they have beginning of every semester. And that's open to anyone. I went and joined the email list of like 30 different clubs. I was able to narrow it down to just 2 clubs that I wanted to be involved with, but it was still good to have like 30 options. So that's definitely one way that is a really good way to kind of like get to know other people outside of your classes. I ended up joining Her Campus, which is like an online newspaper magazine chapter, which Clark University has. And then I also joined Main Idea, which is a club that is paired with a local nonprofit in Worcester that works with schools to provide art classes to local students. And I actually ended up being on the e-board of that too during my last year and a half at Clark. So I think like joining clubs is like the number one thing that I can recommend. We don't have Greek life here at Clark, so clubs are really kind of like the driving social force. And especially for transfer students, like we have over 130 clubs, so you'll definitely be able to find something that you're interested in. And it's just a great way to meet people, and they're open to anyone. Like they're not gonna like turn you away because you're a transfer student. So definitely recommend clubs.
Danielle, did you want to?
So no, I'll let Daniel answer that, and then I'll come back. You can come back to me.
Perfect. I do see we also have a question that's come up. So we'll get to that question as well. So Danielle, did you have anything to add about generally like what social life at Clark looks like for our students?
Yeah, I loved Emily's story. I think that sounds very Clarky. Like there's so many different ways that our students get involved. I'll add that we have over 130 undergraduate student clubs, so a lot of performance groups, and you don't have to like be a theater major to participate in many of the plays that are on campus. Political groups, social groups, and a variety of different activities. There is a lot going on, particularly towards the ends of those semesters. In addition to kind of getting on student club email lists, we send out 2 emails a week called the What's Happening email, and it is the #1 way that students report finding out about things that are going on campus. So it lists every activity for the next 3 or 4 days, whether it's in the residence hall or anything that has to do with students, so that you can kind of find and navigate those things. And we are working on some additional ways to get out there about some of our big events. So Emily mentioned the involvement fair that happens like the second Wednesday right after ad drop of every semester. We also have late night breakfast where Clark administrators will serve breakfast the first reading day of finals, just to kind of welcome and greet students into a hectic time. Halloween weekend at Clark is a really big deal. So we'll have Rocky Horror Picture Show, Halloween, there'll be pumpkins it's fall in New England. There's so many great things to do, but it is kind of 3 days worth of programming that we do towards the end of October. And then in the spring, one day, usually in the calendar, we have what we call a wellness day. So it's just kind of a break with the monotony, particularly of the cold and less light, where we do a series of it's a day off of classes and a time for students to relax and kind of connect with their well-being through our wellness wheel. In the spring, we also have International Gala, which just students all put on. This year, we had over 300 students that participated in the performance of Gala. So our International Student Association coordinates dancers, choreographers, fashion show people, the behind the scenes folks for this great evening of events. And then Spree Day also happens in the spring, which is a random, beautiful day in April where classes are canceled and the green that is behind me on the screen turns into kind of like in a carnival space with live bands and free food and lots of kind of different activities. So I will say, and Emily kind of mentioned this, I think at Clark, it's all about kind of really getting connected and kind of seeing the things that you are passionate about and knowing those passions are going to change. And it's also about getting involved in Worcester and kind of the larger city that exists. So we do have a shuttle that goes between Clark's campus and the Becker campus on loops that also stops at like the CVS and the grocery store should you need it. But on the weekends, it takes students to a variety of places in downtown Worcester. So the Worcester Art Museum, which is free for students, the train station so people can go into Boston, and then some of the kind of cool spaces in Worcester where you can go like restaurants or shopping. And so kind of really immerse yourself in our Worcester community as well.
Awesome, thank you. Yvette, I know you had something you wanted to say.
No, I just wanted to respond to the question that was in the chat, if it's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So the question is, if you have a good grade in a course, but it doesn't fulfill any similar course at Clark, does it get taken as an elective, or could you lose the credit? So first, we accept courses with grades of C or higher. So if you have a course that you get a D or C minus, that course will not receive credit. If a course receive a grade of C or higher, or sometimes students take a class as a pass, and then we know that if that pass is a C, Sometimes it's written on the back of the transcript and sometimes it's not. And so we put a little code and ask the student to please, reach out to the registrar's office at the previous institution just to verify that this course earned a C or higher. The course will get credit. We tend not to throw anything away because we understand it's your experience, and some of these classes can also use to fulfill program of liberal studies. So we never try to throw away anything like I mentioned. We accept up to 16 units of transfer courses. So if if you come in with 18, right, you may see something look kind of weird on your transcript where something maybe given like 0.5 unit or 0.25. That's our way of maximizing your course and maximizing your experience and recognize that you did take the time to take these classes. We just wanted to make sure that we give you as much as we can up to the 16. It's not taking anything away from the course. The course will still be, whatever it equates to. If it's a major requirement or if it's a PLS, you will still get the major course and you will get the PLS. It's just to show that we recognize your experience and we will not throw anything away. So C and above gets credit, never ever gets taken away, and also can fulfill a PLS requirement, and of course as a P as well, we'll get that unit as well.
All right, fantastic. I did have a question that we can put out there as well. So a question came about how to set up an intake with accessibility services. And so Danielle, could you answer that question about how that would work? Or Jen?
This one, Tom.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So what you will want to do if you want to register with Student Accessibility Services is you will want to email the director. Her name is Emily Stark, and that's E-Stark, S-T-A-R-K @clarku.edu, or you can simply email the accessibility services @clarku.edu inbox. Both of those email addresses are on the website. But you want to email Emily and supply your documentation to her. There are a couple of ways to do that. The accessibility services inbox is safe. But if you want a safer method, we do have a fax number that you can fax your documentation into. Once Emily, the director, receives that documentation, she will review it and then contact you to set up an intake meeting to go over the documentation and possible accommodations. So that's how to get the process started. You can also just reach out to Emily with the initial introduction. You can introduce yourself and say, I'm interested in registering. I know you need documentation. That will be forthcoming. But you'll want to contact them, get your documentation in, and that kickstarts the process.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The question, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this tangentially, but how does declaring a major at Clark work for transfer students specifically? Also thinking about they'd be coming in at different points in terms of their transfer credit. So like a student who comes in with only having 2 or 3 units versus a student who comes in with that close to the full 16. How do they declare a major? When do they declare a major? What does that look like?
I'll do this. Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon, go.
I love all the questions. Sorry, Tom, something was going on with our computers or something, but now I had a brain meltdown on what the question was.
So yeah, the question is how does a transfer student declare a major, especially keeping in mind that their transfer students are coming in from different places in terms of the transfer credit. Someone might have only 2 or 3 Clark units. Someone might have up to 16 units. So what does that look like in practice, essentially?
So it's different for everybody. I have transfers coming in right now that I'm pretty much walking over to specific departments so that they can get their forms filled out. This is a personal process. Each student's different. You have time to think about and test majors. That's what I love about Clark, is you have the opportunity to explore. You might come to Clark and think I want to do one thing, and then you'll dabble in a course and think, wow, like I might have more of an interest in this. So there's no pressure. I mean, we like students to declare after they complete 2 years at Clark. before, they start their junior year. So every student's different. If you want to have a conversation with an advisor, feel free to reach out to us at that advising@clarku.email. We'd love to have these conversations. If you're ready to declare, we can help you direct you to the proper paperwork, because you're basically just going to fill out a declaration of major form, and then we're going to assign you a faculty advisor in that major. And like I say, I have just done this for a student, so they're already working with their faculty advisor. And when registration time comes, they're going to be ready to go. But, don't feel rushed. If you know what your major is, let's have a conversation. If you're not sure, let's have a conversation as well, because we can help you on both ends of that spectrum. But it really is, it's simple. It just comes down to you knowing what you want to do and speaking to the department and having a form signed. So we're happy to help with that form. That form is something we work with students on a regular basis.
I saw you came off mute.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Brandon said. So students are required to declare the major by the end of their sophomore year, because going into their junior, we want a student to already have a sense of what they're going to be majoring, because there are major requirements that must be fulfilled. Students are required to complete all major requirements, earn up to 32 units or 32 courses, and fulfill all the program of liberal studies requirement before they can earn a Clark degree. So we want to make sure that a student is into a major by the time they begin that first semester of their junior year, so that way they're not falling behind on the major requirements. So technically, you can come in with 4 years, 4 units or 16 units. 16 units makes you a junior, but if you do come in at that first semester, even with an intention of, say, maybe psychology, but you took a class and said, you know what, I don't want to do this, I want to do something else, because sometimes a student may not know what they're doing, but then they get into a class and it hits them, right? When they said, this is what I want to do, we can, you can then switch over to that major. We will look at we will look at the course that you've taken and try to see if any of those fulfill that major requirements. When you do declare your major and sign that form by the department chair, the department chair will then assign you to an advisor, and that advisor will be able to work with you and look at the course that you've taken. It's a fairly easy process. It sounds more scary than it is. It's just filling out a form and talking to a department and to declare your major, and that major advisor becomes your mentor who's going to help guide you through that process. So whether you come in with four units or you come in with 16, the process remain the same, and we will make sure that you get the resources that you need to help me make that decision of what you want to do.
Perfect. Jess, this question is for you. So what does housing traditionally look like for like a non-traditional student, right? So let's say if you're an older student and you fall below that first 2 years worth of credit, because housing is required for the first 2 years. What would that look like if you're a non-traditional student who, doesn't want to go that route?
Yeah, totally. So I would say in general, there's a few different options. And I would say for folks who are transferring in who maybe were at another institution and possibly lived on campus there, I would say you can also waive, there's options to also waive your residency requirement and appeal that. So if you have specific like one-off questions about where you stand within our residency requirement, don't hesitate to email our office, and we're happy to figure out sort of where your particular situation falls. Outside of that, I think we're really fortunate in where we're located in Worcester that we have a bunch of different options. I think when folks think of residence halls on campuses, they think of really traditional, doubles and singles in a hall with a shared bathroom. We have a lot of options for different types of students. So we have small apartments in houses where folks are in a single with shared common and kitchen spaces. We have one thing I didn't mention is we have graduate housing on campus, so that's a lot of I'd say like non-traditional age students. So we have a lot of graduate students living in our halls, many of which are living in some of our houses in apartment style, just like you would get anywhere else in the community. So we can work to talk through what options feel like they would work best for you. But yeah, I think for some of our sort of non-traditional age folks tend to like to live in our apartment or suite style housing, which is absolutely an option.
Awesome. And that it's reslife@clarku.edu.
Yeah, reslife@clarku.edu. There's always sort of like one-off questions. You know, you're half a credit short for being a junior. Does that right? Like, what does that mean? We can work through those things. We know that you all are unique individuals with a unique set of sort of needs. So we'll work with you to figure out like what works for you on campus. And if you're looking to live off and trying to figure that out, we can work with you on that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Good questions coming in through the chat here is how easy would it be for someone transferring as a sophomore to double major? So that's an excellent question. That's a question that I've had before.
It depends. I'm going to start, and Brandon, you can join in, and Jen, if you want to. It depends, right? It depends on a couple of things. It depends, one, on how many units you're transferring first, and it also depends on exactly what the majors are that you're thinking about double majoring. There are some majors that has more course requirement than others, so it depends on how creative you can be on doing courses. So typically, the course load at Clark is four courses per semester. Students are allowed to take up to 4.5 units without any sort of special permission. However, if a student comes in the first semester, and this is not for first semester transfer, but once you've completed a full semester at Clark and you are a junior or senior and you earn a GPA of 3.0 or above, you can get permission to take 5 classes. So getting permission to take 5 classes essentially gives you permission to take 5.5 classes. A lot of students use that opportunity to fulfill the requirements of 2 majors or a major minor. Some students also take summer classes to help towards, whether it's the PLS requirements or just for credits or some of the major minor requirements. So like I said, it depends on the 2 major that students are thinking about that make it whether or not it's possible or not.
I mean, anything's possible, right? I believe that. I believe anything's possible if you want to do that at Clark. Nobody's forcing you to leave in 4 years, whatever you want to do. But there's so many options. Again, this is another great conversation you can have with us if you would like it. And we'd be happy to do that. But, just to piggyback very quickly on what Yvette said, it really comes down to what class, like say you want to do psych and you want to do geography. Those just popped into my head, and you took a lot of those you're transferring a lot of psych classes. You're taking a good dent out of the major requirements for that psych program. That certainly speeds up the process a little as well. But yes, every situation is different. There's no way the one answer will ever fit exactly for one transfer student.
Yes, and students are allowed to transfer in up to half of a major requirement. So if you take in perhaps I think it's biology that has like 10 requirements, you can bring in 5 of those courses that count towards that major. So and all of that requirement is easily written out. It's spelled out clearly how much courses each major requires. So if we have a class that a major that requires 11 courses, right? And you can do half of that and bring those into Clark, you still have the opportunity to take those classes at Clark to fulfill that major requirement. Sometimes a student may come in and say, I want to do a major, I want a double major, I want a double major in psych, but and biology, but I also want to do something else, but I just don't know what it is. We offer these students the opportunity to create their own major. So if you have a question, if you think, Clark does not have the major that I want, we can have a conversation about that major. I recently just had a student who went to that same thing and said, I want to do psych, I want to do biology and chemistry, but I don't want to do a psychology major and I don't want to be a chemistry major. What do I do? And the student actually just ended up doing a newer psych major. Now, Clark does not have that major, but the student was able to complete working with 3 academic departments, create his own major. So there are different opportunities and different ways you can indeed double major. Just have some conversation with us and we'll be able to help guide you to the right direction.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much. And I got another question here, which maybe this should have been one of the first questions in the webinar instead of one of the last questions. But we have transfer students who are coming to us having done all different levels of research about Clark University, right? So what does studying at Clark look like? Like, what makes Clark unique in terms of what it's able to deliver to students? Does anyone want to take a stab at that? And I can talk about it as well. But Jan or Emily?
I can start.
Yeah, sure.
So I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but the number one thing that I was looking for was like just student involvement. I really wanted to be at a place where students like actually wanted to get involved and weren't just like forced to get involved, like as a course requirement or something like that. And that is like really what I found at Clark, especially as a student. Like I didn't know one person who wasn't involved in like at least one club. For example, a lot of majors don't require internships, but students will seek them out anyways. We have like like student-led activism on campus, student-led like groups and organizations, events, things like that. And I think that's one of the things that makes Clark really special, is just because students are actually it's not just like ideas that they have, but it's things that they're actually like putting into action, not just on the Clark campus, but also like off Clark's campus as well. So like, for example, the club that I was involved with, Main Idea, it is originally based off of a local nonprofit in Worcester by the same name. And a Clark student actually found out about them and then started the Main Idea Club at Clark. So people are doing things like that all the time. And I think that's what makes it really a special place, just because of like the high level of student involvement and the willingness to actually go out of the way and like get things done that they want to see happen on campus.
I would just, I think.
Go ahead, Danielle.
Sorry, I would say as an alum and echoing some of what Emily said and having worked at other institutions, the involvement of students in clubs is that's not the only place, right? Like undergraduate research, the study abroad opportunities, some of the ways that you can do those internships, like the type of experience that you get living on campus and being a part of this community, being with faculty who really care about who you are. I had a faculty member who was telling a student about me, and I haven't like talked to him in 20 years, right? So the relationships stay very connected. And I think even to Yvette's point of like, you can create and be and do anything that you want here. And that Clark has all of these like tools at your space to kind of create something that makes sense, particularly for you, and then to let you shine.
Jen?
Yeah, Danielle took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say from the staff side, but also speaking as an alum, but from the staff side, the staff and administrators and faculty involvement is just awesome too. Certainly student involvement and the students are what keep me at Clark, but gosh, what a caring, hands-on, devoted staff, faculty, and admin we have at Clark. And I think if there's a piece of advice I have for you all listening, it's seek advice, seek the supports, go talk to offices. We'll be sending you lots of emails. I'm sure every office that's represented here will be sending you emails to come in and invite you to come in and talk to us. Take advantage of those opportunities, because you can you can really bolster or have a more robust path, academic path that you're on. If you just work with other offices and with faculty, you can discover projects and research, as Danielle said. But basically, yeah, what Danielle said.
Awesome. So that wraps up our info session here. And by info session, I mean webinar. And I want to thank the all-star panelists that we have here who came to help answer some questions about what it's like being a transfer student here at Clark. If you have any lingering questions, go ahead and shoot us an email at transferadmissions@clarku.edu, and we'll be happy to help. And once again, my name is Tom. You can always reach out to me too, and my email is thmorgan@clarku.edu. And with that, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and everyone take care. All right, thank you so much.